Negotiations right now ongoing, round 2 today in Geneva. Jonathan, what is your thought? Will these negotiations with the Iranian regime ultimately bear fruit like they never have in the past? Is this a new day in diplomacy with Iran or the same old story?
Well, you see the talented and experienced Iranian negotiators hard at work, working overtime in order to do exactly what you said, to basically buy time and wait for something else big to happen that'll divert attention away from what the Iranians are trying to do. I think the level of trust between the two sides, US and Iran, is very low, rightfully so. We know that the Iranians are skilled deceivers and diplomatic. They're very crafty when it comes to using time and diplomacy. But at the end of the day, the US, I think this administration knows how to see through that and carries a big stick here with a very clear message. This time is different. Now, what I think we should be mindful of is that the minimum that the Iranians are willing to negotiate does not meet America's minimum here. We don't see common ground because, we've been here before. We need to talk about zero enrichment on Iranian soil, no further ability for the Iranians to enrich anything.
And they've refused that thus far.
And they have refused and have said, we're not going to talk about that. The US and Israel have said, we do not want the Iranian regime, a hostile, belligerent, warmongering regime, to have missiles that have a range of more than 300 miles. You can have shorter range for protection, but not more than that. The Iranians are saying no. And of course, Israel doesn't want Iran to continue to fund terror proxies all around the Middle East and wreak havoc and instability. But the Iranians, they're sticking to their guns and they're saying we're only going to talk about very specific parts of the nuclear deal. What that means is their maximum doesn't meet US minimum. And I don't think that these negotiations will lead to anything meaningful. But I suppose that the US administration needs to go through the motions and give diplomacy a chance. But we see the option which is on the table on the other side.
Yeah, Jonathan, great breakdown. And we saw this back in spring 2025. President Trump gave the regime 60 days to basically give up their nuclear program. They did not. Then Israel and the United States went to work, Operation Rising Lion and Operation Midnight Hammer. It doesn't seem like the buildup of U.S. forces in the region right now is coincidental. Break down for us a bit this. President Trump has called it an armada. Break down a bit the assets that the U.S. has in the region right now at Iran's doorstep and what that could mean for potential future action against Iran.
So what we've seen is a very significant, what we have seen and are seeing, by the way, it's ongoing as we're speaking. There are more and more assets focused in the Middle East. So we're seeing strike and offensive capabilities based on the two battle groups, the Lincoln and the Ford incoming, which have tremendous firepower. We're talking about serious firepower capable of striking everywhere in Iran and doing so with a very high level of troop security for American airmen, but we're also talking about air defense, missile defense for various U.S. assets in the region, and I suppose also in assistance to Israel, and a lot of supplementary capabilities that are strategic in terms of intel, command and control. There are also reports of special forces that are in the region that have the ability to conduct special forces operations inside Iran if the president decides to go down that path, which I think shouldn't be, I think we should still entertain that option. That is an option that is on the table. But what the US has is a real variety of options, and it really matters what the US wants to achieve. Last word about the Iranian people. You know, the Iranian people, they are now commemorating more than 40 days since the massacre of thousands, tens of thousands of Iranians on Iranian streets, and they are still waiting for that help to arrive, and they're holding their breath. I believe that they will not be disappointed and that they will get the support that was pledged to them. At the end of the day, if the Iranian regime gets away with doing what they did, with butchering civilians on the street, then every dictator in the world will know that it's open season and every crime will go unpunished. So that's not the message that we want to deliver to the world, I think.
Okay, Jonathan. Israel and the U.S., intensive talks here about the Iran threat. Prime Minister Netanyahu was at the White House with President Trump, their 7th meeting in just a year, by the way. Is there the potential for Israel to come alongside the United States in this potential, we still have to say, assault against the Iranian regime?
The potential is there. This is a U.S.-led operation. Israel will not do anything unless it is approved and coordinated with the Americans. I think you could read that very clearly from the readout between Prime Minister Netanyahu and the President. Yeah. This is U.S.-led, and U.S. sets the tone here. Israel will, of course, defend itself. So if the Iranians decide to attack Israel unprovoked, Israel will defend itself, and Israel is equipped with the air force and the intelligence that we need in order to defend ourselves. But U.S. is in the lead here. I think Israel would be very happy to do anything supportive of U.S. operations. From an Israeli perspective, and this one is slightly different from the U.S. perspective, Israel sees the Iranian regime as the source of countless murders, terror attacks, and suffering in Israel. This is the nation state that has been providing weapons and money to all of our enemies going back 30, 35 years.
The head of the snake.
It's the head of the snake, and I think Israelis understand that we have a narrow window of opportunity here to do good for the Iranian people, which is important, but ultimately for Israel is to safeguard our future. The Iranian regime is a threat to Israel's future. It is a threat to regional stability. Therefore, I think we have a window of opportunity here. And based on U.S. lead, what the president will decide, Israel will, I think, happily join in and seek to take the opportunity to really change the trajectory of the Middle East here for the better.
Yes, for the region.
To provide
overnight
opportunities for peace, to free the Iranian people from tyranny, 47 years of tyranny. They may be freed from that. And just think about the prosperity that could be unleashed. Think about the commerce. Think about the cooperation, the economy, the culture, all of the things that can be built if the Islamic regime is really relegated to the dustbin of history. What a tremendous and beautiful thing that could be. And, you know, even though things are a bit shaky now, I am positive that that will be the end result.
No doubt. And we have the Abraham Accords, of course. Some have talked about the Cyrus Accords between Israel and Iran. Who knows? God willing.
Yes.
Iran still blustering, of course. They see the U.S. military build up, and they're still boasting and blustering, making threats.
Yep.
What do you think Iran's response might be, Jonathan? You and I were talking off camera a bit. These are theological zealots. They're Islamic radicals, jihadists.
Yeah.
Do they try to go out, in their view, in a blaze of glory, fire ballistic missiles at Israel, U.S. forces in the region? And I guess that's where Israel's very strong missile defenses really play a big part.
You know, I'm very grateful to be in this current situation where the military balance of power between Iran and Israel is in Israel's favor. I think the 12 days Operation Midnight Hammer and Rising Lion proved that Iran is exposed. Iran is a bit of a paper tiger. They may talk tough, but they do not deliver on the battlefield. They're very good at sending other people to die for them. Arabs, there are different proxies that they use. They're not so tough when it comes to fighting themselves, and they're perhaps not so skilled as they believe that they would be. No room for complacency here, but I think that the Iranians will take lessons from the last year, from 2025. I think they understand that they will have a very narrow window of opportunity to fire everything they have at Israel, because everything that will fire will be targeted afterwards. So in Israel, what we are anticipating is a massive barrage of ballistic missiles. And just for viewers to understand what we're dealing with, we're talking about objects the size of a school bus with about either half a ton or a ton of explosives that obliterates everything that it touches on impact. So it's a serious threat for Israeli civilians. We had more than 80 Israeli civilians killed in that operation, sadly. So it's a significant threat, but at the end of the day, all said and done, the Iranians can talk tough, but I think they are running out of military options. And I think, you know, beyond bluster, I think they know, what the situation really is, and that it wouldn't turn out well if they attack Israel.
Yeah, no doubt. Speaking of kind of on their last legs but still blustering, Hamas, shifting gears a bit, Jonathan, still refusing to disarm in Gaza as the U.S. wants to push forward into phase 2 of this Gaza peace plan. The Board of Peace now President Trump has established. What's the latest there in Gaza? Hamas still not disarming. It seems like a bit of a stalemate there in that regard. Give us an update on the state of play on the ground in Gaza right now.
Yeah, the state of play is that there's the yellow line that separates between the area that Hamas controls and the area that Israel controls. virtually half of the Gaza Strip is in Hamas's hands. And I'll be blunt, I am not happy with the current developments. I see that Hamas has the political backing of Turkey and Qatar. And unfortunately, they are not going to disarm unless Israel disarms them. And what that is a recipe for future instability. It means that Hamas will continue to be present, perhaps 1 degree of separation between the technocratic government that is supposed to lead Gaza in the day over. But at the end of the day, you know, it's just like when you have an equation of multiplication and you put 0 somewhere in that equation, that turns everything into 0. An armed Hamas in Gaza means that all of the beautiful efforts that are now being undertaken, they will eventually boil down to 0 because Hamas will drag Gaza to war again. And that's something that I think we really need to prevent from happening. That's still a future that we can influence. Currently, I am not very happy when I look at the situation because Hamas has too much political backing, arrogance, and they're saying, we're not going to disarm of our weapons. You and I know that the only force that can disarm Hamas will be the IDF, and hopefully we won't have to do it, but that is the way it's looking.
Turkey is a big problem. You've been sounding the alarm about this for years, really, especially more and more in the past few months. Recep Erdogan, the Turkish president, he's Muslim Brotherhood. He's a radical Islamist. It's pretty clear. And yet, it's a NATO member nation that's making threats towards Israel. He covets Jerusalem. He talks about this all very openly. And he's digging his claws into Gaza now at Israel's doorstep. Talk a bit more about this current Turkish leader and government and why it's so problematic for Israel and the West.
I think Americans should understand that Erdogan is an imperialist. He has dreams of reinstituting the Ottoman Empire that once governed this area. When you ask him what his dreams are and what he wants to do, you can see the twinkle in his eye, and you can see that he dreams of being Sultan Erdogan. That is his vision, and he wants to take control over the region. He has said clearly in Turkish, not in English. He won't say that in English for Americans to hear, but he'll say it in Turkish that they are aiming for Jerusalem and they want to reestablish the glory of old days. What that means, when you couple that with the political Islam that they are promoting, which is Islamism, the primacy of Sharia law, Muslim extremist Sharia law over secular law, over civil rights, over justice, that creates, I think, a threat that isn't only, about Israel. Most of the time, Israel is just the first bulwark that kind of gets the friction and fights a lot of very bad actors in the region. But the ideology here isn't about Israel. It is about Islamist domination. And there are 2 strong forces that are driving that today in the world. Turkey is the muscle, Qatar is the money. And that is how they are working together. And you could see it all play out in Gaza. Gaza is kind of a microcosmos of that happening, where you have these 2 countries working together. They want to preserve the local branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is Hamas. And they're doing it with money and with diplomacy and with muscle. But I think from an American perspective, Americans should be aware that Turkey is not a good and loyal ally to the US. It is not a good NATO member. It is a country that happily wants US advanced tech, but I think we should have serious doubts about how loyal they are, and maybe some of the secrets of American tech will find their way to Russia and to China, because we know that Turkey works with these 2 enemies of the US. Not trustworthy, not positive, not aligned with American values.
It's a NATO member essentially playing both sides of the fence. You mentioned Qatar. Jonathan, as we see this Iranian ring of fire hopefully receding, do you see this Turkey-Qatar alliance becoming a new emerging threat? As you said, Turkey, the muscle, the military might, Qatar, the money. And then you've got Syria with the new former al-Qaeda commander-led government. Could that be a problem? Seems that Syria may be in Turkey's orbit as well.
It is, and wherever you see the Iranians receding, you see Turkish forces trying to take their place. We've seen that all over Syria. And the sad story is of the minorities in the Middle East, whether it is Kurds in northeastern Syria, Yazidis in that area, Druze in the south, or Christians. all of those minorities, and we're talking about millions of people in total, they are now under tremendous distress because this pact of evil forces, Turkey, Syria, Qatar, they're working together, and it is very far from benign and tolerant. It is about killing and abducting and abuse and many things that are really horrible, and that's happening now. And it's far away from the public eye, and good people in America perhaps don't know about it, but I think they should know that under the umbrella of these countries, atrocities are being perpetrated against loyal American allies. The Kurds are loyal American allies who played a vital role in defeating ISIS. Now, they find themselves kind of with the short straw, and the Turkish are at their throats with support of the Syrian regime. So yes, there's a lot going on. It teaches me as an Israeli to be strong, to be independent, to be able to defend ourselves, but always also to try to reach out and help those different minorities, whether it's the Kurds, the Druze. Otherwise, you know, they're in for a very bad situation, one that I think would be very much regrettable if it is allowed to happen.
No doubt. The Kurds, loyal allies of the United States and the West for decades and decades. Israel,
and fierce fighters, by the way.
No doubt. The Peshmerga, very tough. I've been to Kurdistan.
You've been there. I remember you reporting from it.
That is right, Israel, first line of defense, Jonathan, in my view, for Western civilization, fighting the good fight for all of us. What's the sense on the ground in Israel right now? I was in Israel a few months ago. To me, the morale seemed great. People are saying, we're going to do this. Is that your sense, living in Israel as you do? Yeah,
I mean, people are perhaps a bit battle weary. You know, it's been 2.5 years almost of war. Now there's been a certain respite. We are extremely happy to have our hostages back home. We hear more and more stories about, you know, the abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse that they endured, reports coming out just now. So there's a drip of that happening, but big picture strategically, Israelis are strong. The Israeli economy is fantastic. It's a miracle. People are hard at work. People are industrious, disciplined. And I think that there's this hope that maybe if we play our cards right, if we stay true to our focus, we'll be able to see a totally different and more prosperous and peaceful future in the Middle East. If the Iranian regime is undone, that'll be freedom for Iran, and it'll be a totally different Middle East. And that is, I think, what Israelis are hoping for. And they understand that there's another episode of hardship in between where we are now and that positive outcome. And if you ask me, most people are willing to, you know, tough through it and are ready for an additional round of fighting if at the end we see a different and better future. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, about 30 seconds left. You're going into the belly of the beast yourself often, going on Piers Morgan, debating anti-Israel voices. Tell us a bit about that. You keep your composure always, Jonathan. Thank you. Tell us about going into that battlefield, the ideological battlefield, and why you do what you do. I do what I do because I think, you know, some of the people, I wouldn't want to be in the same room as them, as some of the people that I debate. Questionable, their morals. I think it's so important because a lot of good people around the world are inundated with lies about Israel, with anti-Semitism and just travesties. And if I can be, you know, one drop in the bucket or one drop in the ocean of truth as I understand it and try to represent it, and I am thankful for the opportunities given. That's what I want to do. You're doing a great job, my friend. Thank you. Appreciate you. Jonathan Conricus, folks, FTD.org. Follow him on X across social media. Jonathan, thanks again. Great job as always, my friend. Hey, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload. And tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.